We are being recorded. We should hopefully be streaming on WinCam. If not, you can pick us up later from the WinCam library of fascinating town meetings to view. Let's see what we're doing today. We have a number of ZBA petitions, and then we're going through a lot of procedural stuff for the planning board and looking at our goals and actions for the next year. So why don't we start with some updates? Brian, do you have anything you want to say?
I almost feel like we kind of need to go through something of town meeting, but as an update for others, but I don't think we're there considering, or I don't know how necessary it is. But I think the small update is that Article 6, which was the Waterfield development, which was a 60 unit affordable housing development that the planning board, town meeting, and the select board have been working towards for many years. That passed, and then there was a vote to reconsider it, meaning that some people felt there wasn't enough debate after an hour and 40 minutes. Some felt that wasn't enough time, so we reconsidered it, and or there was a vote to reconsider, but that vote didn't pass, so we didn't even get to reconsider it because everybody felt that the time spent for that was done. So that was a significant win for people that are wanting to expand the different types of mixed use and mixed income housing in the downtown. Outside of that, the DPW, the last few things with the shared streets grant is the DPW over the next week. They've been having, they're going to be putting out these speed tables right around on Main Street, right by Thompson Street, where the Starbucks is, as well as on the other, for a little bit further down Main Street near the Center Falls Dam before you get to First House Pub. So slowing traffic down as you get into the center. And so that's the second to last thing with the shared streets grant that we're using, and the last is the landscaping. Restaurants have been going to Mahoney's and been using the grant money to get what they need, and Mahoney's has been helping them do that, and that is ongoing until it's now been dry, but it was really wet for a while last week, so they're now moving forward. That's all I have for the moment.
Okay, great. I just want to let the board know that as far as we know, when the Waterfield lot comes through permitting, it will be going through us. So that will be a rather large effort, I imagine. The only way it wouldn't go through us is if they decided to go through local initiative, friendly 40B as they call it, but all things seem to point to them coming through regular zoning. So that should be a lot of fun. I do not know when they will be doing that though. So I think the next step is they still have to go through a ground lease. Is that correct, Brian?
The final ground lease, but really what's more important is the funding rounds that they need to go through. And I think everybody, I guess I shouldn't speak for everybody. I think one thing that I want to know is really what's going on in the subsurface in terms of whether or not that underground parking will occur. I do think that's a large part of what made this development appear to be more of a successful project in the eyes of many people. And they were the only ones to provide underground parking. It's obviously at a significant cost, but I want to make sure that they can do that. And if not, I would imagine something about the program would change. So, so the two things really is that the subsurface exploration and then the funding that they need to get from the state.
Right. The only other thing I have to say, and then I'll turn it over to the rest of the board if they have something to update us on, is that the second program in the Housing Equity Forum will be coming up on May 26th. And that we'll be talking about current conditions, future plans, and how to move forward in achieving more equity in housing in Winchester. So we invite everyone to tune in on May 26th. And unfortunately, I don't have a flyer for that to share with you this evening. Anyway, Brian, myself are working from the planning board side, and there are a number of people from the Housing Partnership Board, and we'll be meeting this week to go over what's going to be in that next presentation. So anything from, go ahead, anything from the planning board?
Oh yeah, I was just going to say thank you for representing us at that event, because I thought it was really great and I liked your presentation. So
thank you.
I appreciate your work on that.
Yeah, I agree, Dia. That was such a very informative and historic, perspective that I think a lot of people were surprised to learn about. It was really helpful.
Yeah, there's a lot of history that we tend to not to want to remember. For those who didn't see it, it will be on the Network for Social Justice YouTube channel at some point. I don't know when that will be. Yep.
Oh, the only other thing I was going to say is not to be a downer, but I wonder if any of the people who are fighting against the Waterfield project will, if we'll hear from any of them again, like when we have more meetings about that project.
I think that we will see a range of opinions.
Yeah.
I think that because the project is responding to a very well written RFP with substantial goals that have to be met, that there's really, the project there's not a lot of leeway in terms of changing the overall structure, right, unless, as Brian pointed out, there are issues with the parking. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I think this will be the first time the board gets to see a lot of the same sort of comments that the ZBA sees when they go through the 40B permit process. So it should be interesting. Anyway, I think if that's nothing else from the board, then I think we're a little early to begin ZBA petitions, but Brian, do we have anyone who is for the 18 Fernway Road who would like to speak?
I'll be honest, I'm not sure if the applicant is here. If the applicant for 18, if the applicant for 18 Fernway is here, if you could recognize yourself or raise your hand.
I'm the architect for the project, Carl Oldenburg.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. So thank you. Oops, sorry.
Hopefully I can answer any questions that there might be. The applicant is at least listed on the screen, so hopefully she will join us. But in the meantime, see what I can do.
Okay, great. I have to apologize to the board. I seem to have misplaced my procedures for our site plan and special permit reviews. So bear with me as I struggle through. It turns out that if you have 6 years of planning board envelopes and you stick something in one, you can't find it. So Brian, you want to kick off Fernway, please?
Sure. So typically, I do see that someone's hand is raised. So I'm going to talk about my analysis of the site. And then there's going to be questions from the board. And typically, if it is going to be going towards a potential negative vote, then, or if someone from the audience would like to speak, then we open up the floor and we kind of go from there. So I'm just going to talk pretty quickly about 18 Fernway. So the petitioner is seeking site plan review through section 951, so to be permitted to construct an addition to an existing single-family home with a detached garage, where the total floor area of the single-family dwelling in the garage will be greater than 6,000 square feet. They're also seeking site plan review because of a change of slope over 6%. Of an area more than 500 square feet. Property is located in the RDA, which is the 20,000 square foot zone. And the parcel contains 92,887 square feet. So This proposal entails the addition of an indoor pool with its associated equipment, a bedroom, a kitchen, as well as new garage structure. Much of the area to be developed has already been covered with a tennis court that will be subsequently removed as part of the petition if approved. Engineering did not require additional infiltration as the hardscape percentage is decreasing significantly. This was at the time of that I wrote this, but the engineering department is here if they would like to expand on that. It's an area located it's quite a large addition, but is located in an area that does not seem to be detrimental to the neighborhood due to the large lot and location of the new structure. 8 Fernway would appear to be impacted the most, but the garage is a typical size garage, a little larger, but it's 16 feet tall. It does not appear to be intrusive to the high number of trees in the area. I'm just going to quickly go to, everyone looking at Google Maps here?
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
We're looking at the agenda.
How about now?
Yep.
Okay. So Fernway is this part of Fernway really is kind of almost like a fire road that's like through the woods. It's quite narrow. It's kind of a little more secluded in places, specifically this lot. The area of the addition is located to the right here. So this is what I was saying, 8 Fernway would probably be the most impacted. You can see the tennis court here. But I thought that at a height of 16 feet and being within the setback, so more than 20 feet away from 8 Fernway, I recommended favorable action based upon the size and location of the proposed addition.
Thank you. Do we have any inputs from the design review committee or historical?
So they've had issues due to town meeting because town meeting has gone on. They have not been able to meet. Historical commission was supposed to meet yesterday, but that didn't happen. And now it's been moved to next Monday, even though that is also then the next night of town meeting. So it's unclear when they are going to meet. I do know that they are both going to meet. I'm sorry, design review is going to meet tomorrow. Looks like that was just posted yesterday. So design review is meeting tomorrow, and as of now, the historical commission is meeting at some point next week before the 20th, but I don't know when, and I don't think they know when either.
Okay, and the 20th is I'm picking that out of your discussion.
13th.
That is when
Thursday.
Yeah, so this needs to be done. Our opinion needs to be given to the ZBA by May 20th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and one last thing, do we have any, does engineering, Brian, Brian with a Y, do you have any changes from what Brian with an I said about engineering?
No, Brian hit it right on the head.
Okay, so why don't we open up to the board? Anyone want to start the discussion?
I will.
Yeah, just go ahead and chime in because, go ahead, please.
I thought it was fine. It was hard for me to see if there were any big trees. I don't think there were any where the garage is going, but I couldn't read the ones that are near the pool house. But otherwise, I thought that the project looked fine.
Okay, Yi-Ching?
So I think because of the site and the size of the site, I mean, it seems like it's not intrusive to the neighbors. I was curious about where the grading changes were happening. Are they between the pool house addition and the existing house? Is that the major grading that's going to happen there? More than 6% over 500 square feet, that condition?
I think that's a question for the applicant that we can save that they can explain a little bit.
Okay, so that's one of my questions.
Yeah, I believe it is. This is where this landscape stairs and the it is this area. This is obviously relatively flat where this lawn is, but it's making these buildings work together, or making the building work, the connector piece and the other building work together. But if you want further clarification, I would talk to the architect.
I was just wondering where the land was being disturbed.
Yeah.
And then in the front page where it has some calculations of open space versus, proposed versus existing open space versus permeable space, like how is open space calculated and how did it how did it increase when there are buildings being proposed?
I will take that. Yeah, I'll make this bigger. So open area is basically is where there's not a building, but hardscape. There's a lot of hardscape on that tennis court. So the actual hardscape or the building footprint is actually, sorry, the total impervious area is getting lessened because of that, the loss of the tennis court and then the addition of this building.
Okay, I get that now. So open area just means like open to the sky. Basically.
Correct. So open area means not a building. And then you have green space and hardscape. So open area, yeah, it's just where there's not a building.
Okay. And then I think that the design is fine. You know, I think it's subservient to the main building, and it's, you know, modest, and it's low, and it's 1.5 stories. But the fact that the programming is going to be basically an accessory dwelling unit, which is, you know, what we hoped to happen, but like at what point is it? I mean, do we allow that just to happen? It's just considered like an addition, basically.
Yeah. So sorry to keep answering here, but I think it'll go. Yeah. So technically, what makes a unit, especially in this case, it's not necessarily the fact that there's a kitchen or a bedroom or bathroom. It's whether or not there is a full working kitchen, meaning an oven and a stove. So many people have kitchenettes. It's just an extra bedroom with a kitchenette. This is not skirting anything. It really has to do if they're going to try to put an oven in there or a stove, a range of some kind, the building department will say, well, this is obviously another unit because you can't have technically 2 kitchens in the RDA 20. The only place you can have duplexes by right or at all, for that matter, is in the RG.
Right. So like we're considering 2 petitions tonight that have similar conditions in that it's making more, you know, livable bedroom spaces, it seems to me. I'm maybe jumping ahead, so I won't go there, but like, so this then would be just considered an addition, really, instead of like an accessory building.
It's definitely not an accessory building because it's connected to the main building and has sufficient width, it appears. This is not a duplex because you can't have a duplex here. Again, it has to do, strangely enough, of whether or not there's a full range or oven in the unit. And I'm sure this is what the building department told them as well, because that's how it works.
Okay, I just wanted to understand that what we're looking at and what the definition in is.
It's good
whereas
to get
the
it
garage is an accessory building, and we would judge it by that.
It's good to get this information out. I've got a lot of calls and emails related to this, and it's going to happen more and more as we move forward.
But I would say to approve it. It looks fine to me.
Okay. We have Sally. Did you want to say something about this?
I mean, all in all, I'm fine with this, and that's largely because the property is large and can accommodate what is a significant addition. And I do think of it as an addition. I don't really see it as an accessory dwelling unit. I don't even see it as intended for that. The only question I would have is, you were saying that removing the tennis court and adding the pool house balances, in fact, reduces the impervious area of the property. And in fact, my question is, does the proposed garage tip it over at all, you know, into that increasing the impervious area? But again, I can't imagine that it's a substantive piece of data because it's such a large property.
So I'll answer super quick. The proposed garage up here, as well as this, if you can see the outline of the tennis court here. You can just kind of superimpose this garage and just flip it over here. There's still a lot more space.
That is very helpful. Thank you. Yes, I see that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then one other question I had was, is it an asphalt court or is it a clay court that's being removed?
Okay, I will. So we have two questions for the applicant. And if the board is, did you want to continue, Sally? I'm
No,
writing down questions.
No. Well, just to comment on the question that I-Ching had about the trees, on the drawing that's called topographic plan by Mr. Keenan. If you look at the area, it's very densely penned between the proposed pool house and the two-story brick structure number 18. He's showing some really cool like zigzag stone walls, probably picking up that really significant drop from 90 to 9 or from 95 down to 89. And then the only trees that I see in there are hemlocks. And I mean, I realize they're large trees, but I personally just think hemlocks are difficult to argue for because they are so prone to disease. So I don't worry about them. I know that's very unfair of me maybe, but that's what I.
Well, there are a lot of programs to try to save hemlocks from the woody adelgid.
That's right. That's right. And so you can see there's the ziggy walls, and those are coming out. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So maybe it's time to switch over to the proponent since we're getting to the asking questions phase.
Just show
Uh,
I forget who I'm talking to. Please, could you introduce yourself again?
Okay, my name is Carl Oldenburg, architect from Lexington.
Okay. And you're somewhere in my Zoom here. Okay, so we have three questions. Let's start with the first one. And where is the grade change occurring?
Well, if you want to go back to a site plan, I think the speculation and comments that were voiced earlier were exactly correct. It's essentially that area where the proposed pool house connects to the existing house. Yeah, right in there. It's the ground seems to sort of mound up against that corner of the house and then falls away fairly dramatically. Frankly, we weren't really sure if this fell into the category of a change of greater than 6% over 500 square feet. I thought we would sort of err on the conservative side and said, yes, we are technically changing the grade a little bit in there. It's probably less than 500 square feet, but it kind of depends on how you measure it. So happy to clarify it further. I think there was another site plan which showed some topography. Yep, and if you might sort of zoom in, the elevation of the existing tennis court is very similar, roughly the same as the existing driveway, which is about the same as the floor level of the basement of the house. And so we're putting the floor of the pool house at the same height. And then we have to build a little connector over to the existing house. And so we would be sort of going through those contour lines from an elevation of, I think, about 95, and it rises up to 96, 95, 96. So I'm sorry, the low elevation will be more like 90. So there's about a 6-foot rise there, just kind of up against the corner of the house, which we have to level. And then we'll be putting in some retaining walls and different sorts of landscaping on the north side. You can see some stairs and so forth to accommodate the grade. And yes, all those stone walls and existing stairs, which are rather old and not in great shape, they're all coming out.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for erring on the conservative side and bringing the grade to the attention of the boards. It's better that you do it that way rather than find out after the fact. The other question that I have written down is are the existing tennis courts clay or asphalt?
It would be asphalt. It's not a clay court. It's impervious, so asphalt with a coating over it.
Okay. Thank you much. I think I think the board is ready for a motion on this. Would someone like to make a motion?
I do have one more question. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
So actually, when I more closely examine the drawings for the pool house, I do see that there's a small kitchenette and a bedroom. So is it intended to be like guest quarters? Is that I mean, it looks like any one of a number of things in town that could easily be converted to an accessory dwelling unit, but it's not intended to be one. Is that right?
Not intended to be one at all. The kitchenette is really a place for refreshments. You know, after a swim, you got a lemonade out of the refrigerator, or maybe have a sandwich or something like that. It's really just kind of a refreshment bar. The guest bedroom was added to the program because the homeowners don't have a proper guest bedroom at this point, and this would be like another place that would be, you know, occasionally used, but it's certainly not intended to be a separate dwelling unit or anything.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So is there a motion?
Sorry,
Yeah.
Sorry. There was someone who wanted to speak on this.
Okay.
There was one.
Sorry.
There was one person. I don't know if they still wish to speak.
I thought that was the owner.
I don't know if you can hear me.
We can.
Okay, I'm Veronica Heath and I'm the owner, and I just raised my hand. But I do want to clarify just one thing, that the bedroom was put there only in the case my husband and I are getting up in years and we don't have a first floor access. And that was my intention. So that's all it is. It's as simple as that. If we ever needed to just be able to drive in for whatever, and I'm making like a wider corridor if we were in a wheelchair or something like that, but otherwise that's what it's there for.
Okay, thank you.
I make a motion to make favorable action. Is this how I phrase it? Right.
Recommend favorable.
To recommend favorable action for 18 Fernway, petition 3939.
And
Is there more I need to add to that?
I just want to point out that there are 2 site plan reviews, and I would just, we're favorable action on both reviews.
I recommend favorable action on both reviews for site plan review.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please. I Ching.
Scott, aye.
Heather Hannon.
Hannon, aye.
Sally Dale.
Dale, aye.
And Jarius, aye. So that is 4-0 in favor on number 3939. Thank you all very much. Let us move on to the next one, which is ZBA petition number 3940, 19 Wedgemere Ave. Please introduce us, Brian.
Sure. This is petition 3940. You can see it in front of you for 19 Wedgemere. This is for site plan review. So to be permitted to construct a detached garage where the total floor area of the single family dwelling and the garage will be greater than 5,000 square feet. The property is located in the RDB zoning district and contains, the RDB, which is the 10,000 square foot zoning district, and contains 16,500 square feet. So give me just a second. So the proposal entails the addition of this new 2-story garage, a small proposed attached addition, a new patio, and a new pool to replace the existing pool. The streets in this area have a kind of a balanced rhythm to it with similar frontages. I'm going to go to that in a minute. And as well as not only does it have that balanced rhythm of similar frontages and locations and sizes of garages, but most of the houses on this side of the street are actually, they're large with some more modest houses as well. I have heard from several neighbors, and I agree that the size of the proposed garage is out of scale with the prevailing neighborhood. I'm less concerned with the use of the property as a site for a pool. I heard several comments, both written to me and as well as in emails, as well as the planning board. They've gotten them. You've gotten those emails as well. Not really here to comment on the use of a pool. They can obviously put a pool there without question. I believe the petitioners have the right to a pool and to enjoy their property as such. However, I do recommend unfavorable action with regards to this petition based on the size and location of the proposed garage. I believe the garage should be minimized. a more traditional size garage in this area in terms of height is in that 12 to maybe a 16 or 18 feet. If it's going to be so close to the property line, I'm going to now just go super quick over to Google Maps. So a lot different from this kind of windy, curvy. Oh,
Brian, we're not seeing the maps.
All right, hold on. How about now?
Yes.
Okay, so not that one. So you can see the difference here. We were just showing a rather large addition, but it was a 16-foot tall garage in this kind of windy road through the woods.
That stuff just take it away.
This street is obviously a very, very different part of town in terms of how it was developed and planned. You can see here the project location, that the size of the house is more.
These are my comments.
Yeah, I just had to mute you. Sorry. So this street, it's basically this side of the street does have a lot more houses that have either grown in size through additions or through tear downs and rebuilds. So the house is around, according to the assessors, is around 7,000 square feet. And this would be an additional, I believe the footprint's about 700 or so square feet. So an additional maybe 1,300 square feet on top of the 6,900. As I heard from several, I have talked with several neighbors throughout this, and the location of the garage, although that is, I agree that the location would be more in sync if it was tucked up against each other of the rear garages of every, just like the others. But it's really, is for such a large addition, it's not really typical for it to be so close to that property line. So a detached garage, yes, can be 5 feet away, but typically it's in, like I said, that 12 to 16, maybe even 18 foot tall, not necessarily as tall as this, which is, I think, closer to 26 feet. So I recommend an unfavorable action, with the remedy being to either minimize or move the garage a little further away a house. The idea of site plan review is that it catches these larger additions, because as the larger the square footage is on the lot, the more you can potentially negatively affect your neighbors.
Thank you, Brian. Do we have any opinions from the design review committee or the historical?
Same reason as before, they haven't been able to meet. The design review meets tomorrow, and it's unclear when historical commission will meet on this, but sometime before the 20th.
Thank you. And engineering, Brian from engineering, do you have anything on this?
Yes, as the project is proposed, will be about an increase of 3,000 square feet of impervious surface. However, their design team has addressed this concern, this increase with their infiltration system. If the infiltration system is designed and built and maintained as it's intended, they should be able to mitigate all runoff from the increased surface, impervious surface.
Okay, thank you. They're going down 4% in green space, it looks like, if I'm reading this correctly. Okay. I think, Brian, have you pretty much read into the record the comments that you received in terms of from the public?
No, I have not. I've received, as well as the planning board has received, emails from several neighbors, and some of them are here as well. So I can, they will certainly go. I don't know. I hadn't planned on reading the letters from. They are one was from Jamie Hintlian, who I believe is here on the call and potentially wishes to speak, and then another letter from the Cawthorns, and I'll have to look to see if I do not.
No, what I meant was the gist of what they were saying was that
the gist was the scale and character. I mean, it was definitely based on the scale and character of the prevailing neighborhood, and that such a large structure being so close to the property line. The thing is that if the existing residence wasn't as large, meaning if it was under the square footage, for example, they would be able to build this garage by right, meaning that you're allowed to build a garage this tall 5 feet away from your property line. It just so happens they're caught in this because the existing house is already over the square footage.
It's too close. I know, I'm gonna say that.
Okay, so why don't we switch to the board, and I Ching, looks like you are ready to go.
So I don't think that they do have a right to build that tall based on the zoning bylaw, section 3.3.2, accessory building. So this was what I was referring to at a previous meeting about one and a half stories height. It says no separate accessory building shall be erected within 15 feet of any other building. Done. No accessory building shall be erected in any required yard provided, however, one or more accessory buildings, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so point 1 is are located in the rear yard, fine. 2, do not taken together cover more than 30% of such rear yard, fine. 3, are not over 1.5 stories in height. And from this proposal, I think, the front facade is fine. It's in character with a nice little, peaked roof things. But the height dimensions, the first floor is 13.5 feet high, which is, it's an accessory building. So it shouldn't compete with a primary building in height, and 13.6 is really high. And the second floor is 17.7, which is more than the first. So it's not even, it's dominating over the first floor. So this is obviously not 1.5, it's 2.5. So, I mean, even by our zoning bylaws, it's not conforming.
Well, the tricky part, if I may add something, is the definition of a half story. And
I mean, a story is 7'6".
No, it doesn't have to
clearing,
do, it
right?
has to do with the roof line.
Yeah, it's not measured. It's not measured. Yeah. So the height, you're speaking extremely. It totally makes sense what you're saying in terms of how could this be a half story if it's actually if it's in actuality larger than the first story. That totally makes sense. However, it really is based on the shape of the roof that this reads, or it's meant to read as a half story, like a Tudor. That top story. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the actual definition of half story from the zoning bylaws is a story directly under a sloping roof in which the points of intersection of the bottom of the rafters and the interior faces of the walls are less than 3 feet above the floor level on at least 2 exterior walls. And it's a rather convoluted definition in a sense. So you'd actually have to see the you'd have to look at
a story is like a vertical wall from floor to ceiling.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And and the idea with the half roof is that if this is your if the where the rafters touch that wall is less than 3 feet in at least 2 walls, then that's a half story. So
okay. So I was hoping that by this thing we could prove that it's too big, but you're saying that this law doesn't actually deter this. So but just aesthetically, and yes, in relationship to the other buildings, it feels too big.
Yeah, I think certainly just to put in the guidelines for what we're going through, it is on section and I have to flip to it 9. What are we doing? We're doing site plan right here. Yeah. 9571 is minimize unreasonable departure from the character, exterior, or materials and scale of buildings in the vicinity. So that certainly is where we could come in and talk about the height. So there is really not much else under the review criteria that we could go on. Was there any comments from Elsa somewhere in the board? Sally,
Yeah.
go ahead, please.
I actually think under 957 site plan approval, paragraph 2, and I know that which is to minimize any adverse effect on a historic resource, and I understand that that is technically the purview of the historical commission. However, I am concerned about the overall plan for the property, not just the height of the garage and its disproportion to the other structures in the neighborhood, but also the disuse of the covered entry, car entry, otherwise known as a porte cochere. They're moving the driveway from in front of the porte cochere to the other side of the house. And the word that I keep coming up with is they're obviating, they're making it superfluous that there's this beautiful historic structure attached to the house. They're turning it into an outdoor covered sitting area, and they're putting lawn up to the porte cochere. And I think that it is a significant impact on the meaning of that porte cochere and the whole look of the house. So that's my opinion about that. And then the other thing that one more thing I'm concerned about is the actual pace of current construction. They've already dug the new driveway. Any quick drive down the street will see that there's a massive pile of earth now in the right front lawn, and the driveway has been dug down. You know, they have to make a subgrade, so it's dug down 2 feet down into the ground, and it's you know, running straight back to the back corner where they're planning to put this garage. And I do agree that that a building that is 27 feet tall, 27 feet 7 inches tall, should not be 5 feet off of anybody's property line in the current zoning configuration. And I do think that a careful examination of the drawings will determine that this is not a half story. For one thing, if you look at, where's the sheet? Okay, I'm looking at sheet A40, drawn by Context, a collaborative design workshop. And on sheet A40, if you look at the drawing, proposed garage section G5, Brian, if you can pull that up, I would like to challenge the definition of this as a half story, because it doesn't appear to me to be the case. And perhaps I just need to have the definition in section 10 of our zoning bylaws explained to me more carefully, but I do not see this as a half story. I also agree with I Ching that when you have the interior height of the second story greater than the interior height of the first story, it just, but never mind by definitions and zoning bylaws, by common sense, it barely constitutes a half story. But if you zoom in on G5 of the document that was provided, it's dated 5/3/2021, 19 Wedgemere, Context, a collaborative design workshop. It's sheet A40.
I got it.
Okay. I mean, I have the whole same set that you have.
It came to me as 1117, like this.
Oh, it was the smaller sheets. Okay, that's why I can't find it in the big one.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, Brian's got it now. Now let's zoom in on G5, and someone please explain to me the correlation between the section 10 of the zoning bylaws definition of story, comma, half, and the architectural cross section for the proposed very large garage in this section G5. Thank you.
Okay, so Brian, if you can zoom into the front of the property, to the front, right where I'm pointing, which you can't see.
All right.
Yeah, just go to the front face, and you'll see that there is a.
Yeah, it's on sheet A41, Brian.
No, you were zoomed in correctly. I meant zoom in. Go to zoom into the where you were.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, can you magnify, please?
Yeah, the numbers are tough. I have my magnifying glass at hand.
And what you'll see is that the intersection of that roof as it comes, they have exactly written, I believe, 3'0" right there. So that's one intersection with the interior where it is 3 feet or less. And I believe if you go to the rear of the building, just slide it over to the, yeah, if you go to the rear, and you'll see that there's this exact same measurement of 3 feet.
But that's where the staircase is.
But that's where the roof, the bottom of the rafter where it hits the interior wall is 3 feet above the floor.
Diab, I need to just break in and say that my husband, who's not a member of the planning board, wishes to speak about this architectural drawing, and I want to know if, as the chair, he has permission to do so, or you?
Not at this moment. We're still discussing within the board.
Right. Thank you.
So the key is it 3 feet above the floor, and that indicates that rafter coming down is 3 feet above the floor, because it extends all the way back.
Right. Okay. So then the dormers, if I understand correctly, a dormer, to have a dormer not be defined as an additional story, the dormer width has to be the total dormer width of all dormers added together has to be less than the length of that side of the house. And so
that's only if it's on the if it's on the, Brian, please correct me. I believe that you can put a dormer on a second floor and you don't have to meet a 50%.
That is correct. It's the second and a half story. It's that third, it's that the half story above the second floor that would require that.
Now, see, that doesn't make sense to me, because if you're specifying that the second floor must be of this structure, this garage structure, must be a half story, then the rules about how one defines a half story, whether you're talking about the half story of a 2.5 story house or the half story of a 1.5 story garage,
they're the same.
Yeah, and actually I have a discrepancy here, because you'll see what is on your screen is dated 2/5, but in the drawing that I'm holding in my hand, it's dated May 3rd, and it's got a different shaped dormer shown. So they actually have dormer.
Yeah, you know what? This was the original submission, and this dormer has been decreased to be less than 50%. Or sorry, to be 50%, so as not to potentially trigger that special permit anyway. This is my mistake.
Right, okay.
So I'm sorry about that. But
even then,
this rear shed dormer is, even then, it's unnecessary. I agree with Diab that they could dormer the whole thing.
It does not trigger. Our dormer restrictions only apply to dormers above the second story.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay, good to know. Interesting point to make future reference to. But so I go back to I Ching's question.
It's not above the finished floor, it's above the stairwell.
I withdraw my, I get what Diab is saying, that and that the rules are such that it must be a vertical wall to be considered a full story. And so this is considered one. It's questionable whether or not this is 1.5, but like I don't think that's where we can stand on. We need to move on because it's 819.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
But in my opinion, the building is too tall to be so close to the property line, and it is not going to site plan review. It is not supportive of the minimizing unreasonable departure from character, materials, and scale of buildings in the vicinity. I do have other points about the property that I don't know if they are able to be covered if they're not inside of site plan review.
No, we are only here to cover the points in 957. That's the only thing we can make our decision on. And as I Ching pointed out, we are rapidly moving beyond our time. So I would like to move on to Heather Hannon. Heather, do you have something you'd like to say on this? Or have you already spoken? I've forgotten already.
No, I didn't speak. I don't want this to go on too much longer though. I didn't see an elevation that shows the front with the garage, like for scale context. Everyone's talking about how it's out of proportion with the main building, but I don't see a new front elevation. Maybe I just.
That's a very good
Relative
point.
to the main house.
That's a good point. We always
I
ask
don't
for-
think we have a front elevation
Yeah.
that shows. It's just
think-
the addition.
Yeah. So I
So-
think that would have been helpful if we're going to be arguing about scale. Because the front of the house does look rather large. The other thing is I didn't see what Sally was talking about with the carport being transformed, but maybe that's because there's no front elevation. It looked to me like in the plan it's the same.
Actually, in the house drawings, in the entire set of drawings for the house.
So-
Good one to look at.
So I think the key is they're going to remove the asphalt and replace it with grass.
Yeah.
Right. And they're going to convert where the porte cochere is now into a hot tub with steps down, and there's a fireplace and a cooking area. And in the back of the property, there's another fireplace and an ipe wood deck, an artificial turf, and a proposed garage. And I have a number of other questions about the drawing.
I was trying to talk though, Sally.
Oh, I'm sorry, Heather. You're right. I apologize.
I did, but thank you. I didn't see the hot tub. That was what I wasn't following. I think for keeping the history of the house from the street, it would be helpful if that was still the driveway and if you went through there to get to a new garage. I mean, they're redoing the pool anyway, so I think I would be more convinced if the driveway stayed, because that does read as you're supposed to drive through that. My only other comment is that I wonder if, like, I know we're all on board with accessory dwelling units, and I think that for that to happen, a lot of people will want to put units on top of their garages. So I don't want us to be the ones saying like we never want to see that, because there's a lot of places in town where if someone wants an in-law unit, like that's the obvious place to put it. So I just kind of want to be mindful of how strongly against floors above garages we go. I realize this one is taller, you know, the first floor is taller than it needs to be, but personally, I would like to see additional units in garages. So I wonder if maybe at another time we could talk about what our tolerance is for that and guidelines and what that would look like and like what we would support.
Right. I think that's a good point. I think that that it seems like the board is moving towards recommending unfavorable action, or to recommend. We can't. Site plan reviews can't be denied, but they can come with. I'm looking for a word. I'm losing it.
You can recommend to endorse the site plan.
Right.
Or potentially withhold.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
So it seems like the board is moving towards recommending to withhold the site plan, and typically we then open the floor to the applicant.
Hi guys.
Wait, hold on a second. You have not been recognized yet, so please hold on one sec. And so with the board's permission, I'd like to ask the applicant, is the board okay with that?
I'd also like to hear from neighbors if they came.
Right. So first we're going to go with the applicant, and
I'm sorry, I do have one more question about site plan, which is the number of removed trees, 6 inches or caliper, 6 inches in caliper or larger, and a very large
yes.
tree has already been removed.
Yes, thank you.
Town property that was cut down, where the driveway that hasn't yet been approved has already been dug.
You're saying there was a tree on town property that was removed?
There was a tree on town property that was in the way of where they wanted to put their new driveway, and that tree has been cut down. It is gone, and the driveway has been dug. And I didn't think you could dig a driveway until you had a permit for site plan approval to do so. And then I don't know if the DPW has approved the curb cut or not. I'm assuming that things would not have gotten this far if they had not, but one shouldn't make assumptions in this world.
I think that the only thing that can prevent you from digging the driveway is if there was a permit required and you weren't able to get the permit. I don't know. This is something, Brian, could you help us out on whether the driveway can be dug?
Yeah, you don't need, there's no permits that you need to pave any part or dig any part. It's a question of if you're bringing in a certain amount of fill. The DPW is what's called it's a curb cut, and that is a permit that they would go through. It's a street opening permit that they would need to in order to actually cut that curb. I have not been out to the site, and we can obviously ask the applicant about that when it's their turn.
So in order to cut a street tree down, you do actually need to contact the town to do so. So that's one of the questions of the applicant. And I am mindful of time here. Let's see. And yes, there are trees in the back that are to be removed as well. And there are certainly questions about whether or not there's only one tree which seems to be removed, and there's a 24-inch tree which will have its root system severely degraded by the position of a large structure. Just because I don't know how they could save that 24-inch tree.
Diab, through you to the owner, I believe the trees on site have all been removed already.
All the trees.
Okay, so let's. Why don't we turn to the applicant? If you could identify yourself, please, and if you are the owner, just give us your address. If you're not the owner, tell us how you're connected to the project.
Hey, everybody. Ricky Bellavo, my wife, Amy Bellavo. So we are the owners of the property. So 19 Wedgemere. Thank you guys for taking your time, to meet with us tonight. I guess first thing, it was never our intent to make this garage this large, or that it would be something that would bother neighbors. So, right off the bat, we're going to redesign it. We'd like to go back and make it smaller. There was never an intent of us to make an oversized garage. We asked our architect to draw us a garage that, based on the zoning code, that would be compliant. And this is what he submitted. So, but we had never had an intent to offend any neighbors or do a garage that was too large. So, what we'd look for, I guess, is if we could push out, push to a future meeting and come back with a garage that fits the size that you guys would recommend for this location. So I think you said about between 13 and 16 feet. We don't have any intent of that being an additional dwelling unit or anything like that. It was more for storage. Our family's hoping to move there, into the house sometime this fall. So yeah, we would request the ability to present again with a garage that's down to the size scale that you guys would prefer.
So just let me comment on that, since we are we are just an advisory board. If you want to postpone this, you'll need to speak with the zoning board, and Janine Virello is the contact person there. Am I correct on that, Brian? Tell me if I'm wrong.
No, you're correct.
Yeah, so we're more than happy to see this when you come back, but it's the Zoning Board of Appeals that you really need to talk to in terms of postponing or to have them move your hearing to another date. We did have the questions about the trees. So in your diagram in the back, you have removed, it indicates a single tree is being removed to put the garage in. Is that correct? Or how many trees are you going to be removing in the back for the garage?
So there were some very large trees on the right-hand side, right on our property line with our next door neighbor to the right-hand side. Mm-hmm. Those have been removed. We will be replanting trees that are more in scale with the area. They were really detrimental to my neighbor's house. So as soon as we closed, they actually approached us about having those taken down and putting trees that were more of scale. So those have been removed along that right-hand side. And then there was another tree, I believe, in the rear that was removed where the garage would go. And okay, and our plan is to plant a lot of, You know, we plan on doing we have a large landscape plan, a landscape architect. We're going to be doing a lot of replanting of semi-mature trees around the property that we feel will be more in scale with what's going on the site.
Yeah, so that is one of the things we didn't get was a landscaping plan. Am I correct in that? And we typically do get a landscaping plan with the, I don't know if it's required for a special permit.
So yeah, we have an extremely detailed landscaping plan done by MDLA, which is the Boston landscape architecture firm.
Right, so that should really be part of your application. Because that allows us to understand what's happening. And so following up, did you get a permit to remove the street tree that was in the front of your property?
I'd have to get back to you guys on that. I wasn't involved in the actual hiring of that process. So I'm not aware that it was what was done or what wasn't done.
Okay, and do you have, what's the proper word for that, Brian? The curb cut permit, is that what it's called?
A street opening permit.
Do you have a street opening permit yet for your new driveway?
So I don't believe so. The curb's still in place. And this really was the driveway was dug because we needed access to the rear yard to take out the old pool and allow access for the new pool to start being put in. So we don't have any intent to pour the driveway or anything in the short term. It's more of an access point for the rear to get them back to be able to work on the new pool. We also needed to get a truck in there because the basement floor was really rotten and cracked. So we needed to pour some new flooring down on the basement floor. And so that was also needed for access. So it's more for access at this point is why you see that dug out for truck access.
Okay.
But I think the question is, has this curb been cut?
I don't believe so. I believe right now it's just they're accessing.
They're just mounting the curb. Okay.
I think what I saw when I was passing the property yesterday afternoon is that there's boards laid against the curb to make it easier for truck tires to go over the curb. But I think the sidewalk has been impacted by the traffic, but you know, such things can be repaired. What can't be repaired is the replacement of a mature town-owned tree. That's a significant loss to our canopy.
Yeah, so that is, so why don't we put in a list of things that we can ask or this is actually something to pass along to the ZBA in our comments, I think, right. is to determine whether or not that tree was moved with appropriate permits. So I think does the board need any more input from the petitioner, or should we move on to maybe hearing from some of the neighbors?
Let's move on.
Move to neighbors or move to?
Yes. Move to neighbors,
okay.
Please. Quickly.
Okay, so I see a hand up from someone named Teddy. Brian, do you know who all the neighbors are who are with us?
Teddy is Carolyn Hensley, and I am a neighbor.
Okay, hold on 1 second, please.
So no, I don't have all of the I don't know all of the names. I only know the ones, but yeah. So we can just start with the Hintleys if we're going to go straight to a neighbor, just because they were the first to send
sure.
correspondence
so
to the board.
If you would like to speak, can you just put that in the chat so that we know who you are and we'll call on you in the order that you put yourself in the chat. And if you could, I hate to say this, but we are running very late. If you could limit yourself to maybe a minute or so, and if someone has already made your point, please consider just letting that stand. So first, go ahead, please. The first person who asked was
Jamie and we're going to go with Jamie and Carolyn Hintleyan.
This is Carolyn Hintleyan. I am a neighbor, and I respect that what's at issue with this board is not the subject of the Zoning Board of Appeals, which is about square footage. I do think it should be said that the new owners have already begun to dig for an addition to the house, which is already beyond 5,000 square feet. I respect the desire to have a garage. I think that the owners are trying to pack a lot into the property, and really one can't always have it all at the same time. I note that the decision of this board is to be about whether the character, materials, and scale of buildings in the vicinity. I do feel that you're missing a huge element, which is the neighbors in the vicinity. And this garage, as proposed, would have an incredible negative effect on the neighbors in the vicinity. And I know some of them are here to speak. And I know we have forwarded some pictures and some drawings for you to see. But a garage of this scale, and I will use the word garage in quotes, is completely out of scale of the neighborhood. It would impact several neighbors in terms of the amount of light that they receive. It would completely make one feel as though one lives in the city. We are the caretakers of a 120-year-old beech tree, which requires light. I suspect that some of its roots may have already been destroyed in the digging that's already taken place. There are a lot of inconsistencies in the architectural drawings. Leaves one wondering how that happened and why that happened. And I think we need to move to other neighbors and look at some of the pictures and diagrams that have been submitted that will show the impact on other neighbors, because we, of course, are the neighborhood, and we live in this neighborhood because we feel protected by certain zoning laws. So I will now pass to any others who have something to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next is Beth and Rich Camplo.
Please go ahead. State your names and your address.
I'm asking Beth Camplo to unmute, but it does not appear to be working. We'll come back to you. We'll go Jay and Tara Dowdman.
Yes. Good evening. My name is Jay Dowdman. My wife and I are abutters. And one question that I would like to try to further understand, and I certainly appreciate the sentiments expressed by our new neighbors, is on the site plan, the perimeter of the garage, the dimensions of the garage that maintain the 15-foot distance from the house are listed as 21.7 by 31. But the architectural drawings of the garage are 24 by 31. I don't believe you can fit a 24 by 31 garage and maintain 15 feet of setback. I'd also like to understand, if I may, the 15-foot minimum distance required for an accessory building in order to be allowed under 332 and only have a 5-foot setback. Is that from buildings on this property or buildings on any property? It could certainly be within 15 feet of an existing garage in the caddy corner property, the Hintlians.
So I'll just say super quickly, just so we'll go. It's 15 feet within another structure on the lot, so it has to be within 15.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you for that clarification, Brian.
You'll see a lot of garages, like many have.
I don't believe regulations say that it needs to be on the same property.
I'm sorry, whoever's speaking, please, the town planner is speaking, please don't interrupt.
So you can see in a number of neighbors have also said a lot of the time we do see many all throughout town. You have a 5-foot garage off the setback here, and then the rear property here, there might be another garage here. So a lot of time it actually is more than 15, but the way that the zoning law, I can go to, I believe it says 15 feet between buildings on a lot, but I can
Well,
get that information.
That's fine, Brian, I appreciate it. It does not say that, it's fine. And I didn't know if all those other instances were variances or grandfathered. I didn't, that's helpful to understand. So I would certainly call attention to the discrepancy in the dimensions with regards to the setbacks, which are listed as 5 plus or minus feet, not 5 feet. And then the 15 feet from the corner of the house and the 21.7 versus 24 is a pretty significant difference. And so I don't think the garage can be built in the square that it's been designated on the site plan.
And just to add, since Carolyn mentioned, the impact on us in our backyard would be absolutely massive. I mean, I cannot stress enough how big this structure would sit in our backyard, whereas we were looking at a lot of trees and blue sky. The trees are all gone. And instead we would look at, I think, a 512 square feet of building with windows overlooking our backyard, which just feels a little bit invasive.
Okay, thank you. Just for the record, you said you were a butters, but a butter is a technical term, which could mean
directly behind.
Could you give your street address, please?
8 Yale Street.
Okay, thank you. Brian, who's next?
Hold on just a sec. There are other two that potentially would like to speak, but I think Kathy Costa and Renee and Tom Pavlon, but this was just a list given by a neighbor, said that these are people that wanted to speak, but it's unclear. But those are the last two on my list are Kathy Costa and then Renee and Tom Pavlon.
Okay, so again, if we could keep this really quick and or short, I should say, not quick. Why don't somebody just unmuted? Who is the first one again, please? I'm trying to find them. I can't see everyone.
Renee Pavlon has Renee and Tom Pavlon have their hand up. I would go right to them.
Okay, please.
Hi, I'm Renee Pavlon. I am also an abutter. Our address is 12 Yale Street, and our back fence abuts the backyard of 19 Wedgmere. We agree with our neighbors. We are concerned about the size and the scale and it fitting in with the neighborhood, because clearly if you look at any of the detached garages in this area, there's nothing that's 2 stories that is detached. So I don't need to repeat what they said, but I would say that Tom and I are in agreement with the concerns.
Okay, thank you very much. And the one last party who wished to speak. You could identify them, Brian. I can't see all of them.
That's okay. It was Kathy Costa, but it was unclear if they wanted to. But go right ahead, Kathy, if you'd like.
Hi, I just wanted to say that I support my neighbors in trying to keep the historical nature of our neighborhood and, you know, appropriate size, and to give everyone the ability to enjoy their space as they currently are.
Thank you. And could you give us your address, please?
Yes, I'm at 8 Wedgmere.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I think that if that's all the neighbors who'd like to speak, I think we've heard pretty consistently from the neighbors that they're concerned about the size. Does the board want to move on this? Is there a motion on the table, I guess?
I have a chance I just wanted to give Jay.
I'm sorry, sir. You'll have a lot of time to speak to the zoning board. Okay. Which is the board which actually will handle this. They're the ones that you really need to talk to. We're just an advisory board. And we're just getting input from everyone, and then I'm afraid that we've run out of time because for this we still have another thing to do on an A&R. So
we'll do our best efforts to swing by and talk to our neighbors with the new plan.
I think that would be really good. Obviously you've heard from your neighbors, and so It's always better to work with your neighbors and not have to go before a board, which challenges your design. So I think that's a good approach.
Perfect.
So moving to this board, is there a motion?
I can make a motion that the planning board recommends to not grant site plan review. Is that correct? How you say that?
Not endorse or withhold.
Withhold.
It votes to withhold site plan review, and in particular, with particular reference to the neighbor's concerns about unreasonable departure from character, materials, and scale of buildings in the facility, 957 paragraph or criteria 1. Is that properly worded, Brian and Jeff?
Yeah, I at this point, I think we can just, we don't need to pull in the neighbors for our decision in the main decision. We can provide it as, a supplemental information.
And
but
we had a second point, which was that, and we are asking for further information about the question of the removal of a mature town-owned shade tree on town property.
Right.
Without a permit, and the question.
We'll just,
yeah.
Right, so we'll point that out is in one of, okay. Is that, okay, so we've got that.
So moved.
I'm sorry.
Don't be.
I'm trying to write this all down. Withhold site plan review, request information on permit for street tree. Okay, is there a second? I'm sorry.
Well, I just, I guess it didn't click when Sally was first talking about the tree, like what street we were talking about. Then I realized that we were talking about Wedgmere, which is like a historic boulevard, and there are original plans of how that street was laid out. And I think it is a really big problem if they cut down one of the trees on that boulevard.
Well, right. So that is, that's certainly, I don't know where that goes under. I guess that goes under, if it is a historic tree, and in my opinion, trees that are 100 years old are historic.
But also specifically part of the design for that street.
That's right.
Okay,
historic
so.
Street in a historic district, and it's a historic house in a historic district.
Well, yeah, the word historic district has legal meaning, so.
Correct.
It is certainly a.
Isn't it a historic resource?
It would be a historic resource. So adverse effect on historic resource would be the removal of the street tree. So would you like to amend your motion to include that?
So the motion would be to withhold site plan approval based on 957 paragraph 1, unreasonable departure, 9572, adverse effect on historic resource, which is the Wedgmere Avenue plantings, and 957 standard 3, which is removal of number of removed trees 6 inches in caliper or larger. Yes, those.
Okay. So Nancy, did you get all that?
I will.
Usually Brian opens up an editor and starts typing, but he is just showing us our so I guess it's 9571, 9572, 9573 are the key ones.
Right.
And then
yeah, right.
And so 9573 has to do with the removal of the trees along the fence, or the removal of the trees to place the garage. I don't think that we can discuss the trees that were removed along the fence because that's not part of what we're reviewing. Okay, is there a second?
Yes.
Okay, so we have Dale first, Hannon second. Okay, roll call vote, please. We'll start with I-Ching Scott, please.
Scott, aye.
Sally Dale next, please. Did we lose you, Sally?
Dale, I. Apologies.
Thank you. Heather Hendon?
Hannon, I.
And Jarius, I. So 4-0. And I think that in the notes that go along with this, we will have remarks on the neighbors' concerns and also indicate that the property owner is willing to reduce the scale of the building and willing to discuss that with the neighbors. So that will go to the ZBA. And of course, our comments and decision is based on what we have in front of us. So if there's a new design and it comes back to us, we will have a chance to comment on those. Finally, in this section, we are way off, but let's get this done quickly. We have the A&R, approval not required for Waterfield Road. Brian, please take it away.
All right, I'm going to try to go here quick, and then the applicant is also here from representing MBTA if I miss anything. So the petitioner, which really at some level here is actually the town and the MBTA. This is a project that we've been working on in order to do the reconfiguration of the train station that has now commenced in terms of the demolition, or will very soon. They're seeking an A&R based on negotiations with the MBTA as it relates to the redesign of the station. The MBTA is going to acquire parcel W-1 as part of the MBTA project and need that parcel to be conveyed. This is the first step in getting that parcel ready for disbursement from the town. All necessary information has been shown on the plan. This is not in itself obviously a buildable lot and conforms to all the regulations and the rules and regs of subdivision. I recommend endorsing the A&R, and I believe there are two representatives from the T. If it makes sense to turn it over to them now, I think now would be a quick time to do that. This should be kind of a if there's anything that I missed.
Yeah, hi, Nathan Ray from the MBTA. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, go for it, Nathan.
Okay, great, thank you. I got Mark Thompson here as well. But yeah, you said it well, Brian, thank you. And we're looking forward to continuing with the construction project going on as soon as we clear up these real estate issues, and then we can get some other ducks in a row and then go out for advertisement for the job. And thanks for everybody's patience with the demolition and cooperation. Mark Thompson's on the call. He's a designer with Jacobs Engineering. Mark, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Hold on 1 second, excuse me. I had my microphone turned off, so you couldn't hear me try to bring some order to this. I first want to see if the rest of the board requires any input from you, so that way we can move this along quickly, just for efficiency, since we're about 45 minutes behind in our schedule. So the rest of the board, do you require any more input from the applicant?
No.
No.
I-Ching, are you okay with what we've got?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's probably more efficient. Is there, can we have a motion to endorse the A&R? And then we also need to vote to have the town clerk sign what's the proper language, please?
Attest to it would be to vote to endorse the A&R and have the clerk attest to that vote.
Okay, so vote to endorse the A&R and have the clerk
attest to that vote.
Attest to that vote. Okay, so that is the language. If someone simply wants to say so moved, that would be great.
So moved.
Okay, that was I-Ching. Do we have a second?
Second, Dale.
And that was Sally Dale. Roll call vote, please. Heather Hannon.
Hannon, I.
Great. I-Ching.
Got I.
Sally Dale.
Dale, I.
And Jarius, we have 4-0. Thank you all very much. I appreciate you guys coming out and sitting through our special permit discussions, our site plan reviews. And I think we're all excited to see the MBTA project move forward. So thanks a lot.
Very, very super quick. Mark, I will let you know when that can be picked up. We just need to scan it and have the, after the clerk signs it, and then you guys can pick up that Mylar.
Right. Thank you very much, Brian, and thank the board very much for their help. And
excellent. Thank you much. So we are now moving on to our, I've lost my
agenda.
My agenda.
Okay.
Where's my agenda?
We got it here. Okay, we're supposed to now talk about the voting procedure for the 5th planning board member to be filled. The first decision we needed to make was, when are we going to do this now that town meeting has been extended again to the 17th. Dieb sent out a pretty succinct email about scheduling. Hope you had a super quick chance to look at that. We basically have 3 options in terms of figuring out what we need to do in order to get this 5th member on board. Right now we're meeting on the 17th. We would have to meet really early in order to make that happen. We'd have to, it looks like it'll be an hour. So the idea is that maybe we could potentially meet from 5:30 to 6:30, something like that, because the select board still also, I believe, has to meet before town meeting. We are not really planning. That leaves us to have a potential 6-hour Zoom from 5:30 to 11:30, which obviously is not, it's not really conducive towards good behavior at the end of the night. So the other option is that we do a special meeting. Let me get this up. I believe so. Instead of doing it on the 17th, the select board was thinking potentially if we were all available. The whole point here is that we need all 9 there. If 8 do it, it's not going to work. And Susan Verdicchio, the chair of the select board, had said, it's like, well, we're actually considering a Wednesday, May 19th. This is a week from tomorrow, from 6 to 7. So it's a 1 hour. It's a special meeting. If we can all do it, that is another option. So hopefully we can figure that out.
Yeah.
If it's a flat out no for a 6-hour Zoom fest, fully understandable. It's fully understandable. The next possibility is a standalone date, May 19th, 6 to 7. So is that possible for people?
I have a housing partnership board that same night, and that would be difficult for me to not attend, considering the week after that we're going to be doing the second housing equity session. My other concern with 6 to 7 is I don't think that gives us enough time. I think we need at least an hour and a half if we want to get full input or full interviews plus voting.
How many people are there?
There's now only 5. It was 5.
Only?
Well, there was 7 and like a half for a while.
Yeah. So I also sent out another email with the process, which we can get into after this. But my thought was that we would need probably around 8 to 10 minutes per person in terms of, and inefficiencies in the whole process usually adds up. So if we do it, an hour and 15 would be really tight. I think scheduling for an hour and a half might be safer.
I concur, Diab, that an hour and a half would be the minimum amount of time we would need to accomplish this task.
So are you saying, Diab, for an hour and a half, you cannot meet on the 19th?
I have a meeting that starts at 7:30. So the only way we could do that is if we had a meeting at 6, which I guess works because that's when they were thinking of doing it. So if we can do it, yeah, I can do it on the 19th. Sorry, I forgot that this was before my meeting. So I can do
that too.
Okay.
Okay, so let's make sure here. So are we? We got Diab that can do the 19th at 6, and I Ching.
But Brian, you said the select board is free only until 7.
Well, so that was Susan Verdicki. She didn't necessarily know how many people were there or how long. She said that 19th as a possible date for a select board meeting. We could say yes from 6 to 7:30 or whatever. But I mean, it's more of does that date and rough time work for people?
That is a very unideal time for my family, but if that's when the select board can meet, then that sounds like that's the only offer.
Well, no, it was us kind of talking. I think I guess we could throw out one other idea, but as of right now, it seems like 5:30 on the 17th is not working. The 19th could potentially work. Let's come up with one other idea that we could throw back to the select board. So so what are some other?
If we're coming up with one, I'd prefer something like 7 to 8:30.
Okay.
Maybe the following Wednesday. Is that what, or the
yeah.
same time? Oh no, yeah, we can't because of that. All right. Well, I will get back to
any
Susan
day.
Well, is it possible? I mean, if we push it out another week, I mean, we really need to get this over. So, to be honest, why don't why don't we see if we can do it on the 19th? If we can push it. Okay, so we believe most people could make, I think all people said they could make it, although with some reservation, from 6 to 7:30 on the 19th. If we can push it from 7 to 8:30, I believe that was your preference, Heather?
Yeah.
So if we can push it to 7 to 8:30 on the 19th, I will just attend my meeting late. That's fine. And that will just make me want to get the selection process over more quickly, so I won't say much.
It's possible. I just have to deal with childcare. I mean,
yeah, no, you don't have to explain. It's completely, yeah. So the only other time is, what are our other dates next week that people are available?
The 20th, which is Thursday.
Okay, the 20th is Thursday. It is a ZBA meeting, but I don't think we've had anything that really needs more explanation. So I think, yeah, that would work. So the 20th, and again, preferentially a 7 to 8:30. Is that okay with everyone?
Mm-hmm. Okay with me.
Okay with me.
Okay, so we've got. Sorry, Brian, I intercepted your momentum there. I apologize. So
no worries at all. So it's either gonna be 7 to 8:30 on the 19th, or a similar time on the 20th.
Right, and yeah, and then,
if we have to do 6 to 7:30, I've put it on my calendar
for the 19th.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, am I correct that there will be town staff notifying the 5 candidates of the change?
Yeah, well, they've already been. All of them have been sent Zoom information for the meeting on the 17th. They all got sent on Monday. Each individual person got their own thing. So I would imagine, or not, I would imagine that if it changed, it's changed, they will get those changed in place.
Was I the only person that said no for back-to-back with town meeting?
No, we just thought you would take the heat. We all agreed with you, but.
Okay. I mean, I can't start Zoom at 8 a.m. and then end at 11 p.m.
All right, so I will send Susan that email of with 7 to 8:30 work on the 19th. Then that's really the second option would be 6 to 7:30, and then the third option would be the 20th.
7 to 8:30, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Got it. All right. Let's move on.
So now the next thing is we have a time, or we have a schedule for it, and then. Brian, if you could bring up that email I sent to the board with the suggested process.
Yes, give me just a second.
Yep.
All right, hold on. This is not quite there. I'll do this instead. Okay. please do not reply. Is this what you guys are seeing?
That's it. Yep.
Okay, go for it, Deanne.
Okay, so I spoke with Susan Radicchio, the chair of the select board, and we both agreed that the selection process of the last time did not work out very well. And so we thought we would return to a more traditional process. And so this is our draft plan. It is up for review and discussion and agreement by this board. But the idea is that everyone will be in the room. When we do this in real life, everyone sits in the audience and gets called up to the table. So we'll do the same thing during Zoom. We would allow every applicant to have a brief statement. 2 minutes is a suggestion. If people think that's too long, we can come up with that. What I think worked well last time was that there was a standard set of questions that was asked of each of the applicants, so that we could have a uniform understanding of where they stood. There was some time for follow-ups, which would allow board members to pursue other questions or maybe go deeper into their responses. Then comes the voting. So because we have a large number of applicants, it's possible that no one will get a majority of the vote in the first ballot. And so we would go through multiple ballots, and the only question is, how do we select the candidates to move on to the next ballot? And my suggestion is that we select the candidates who have the top 2 vote tallies. So that means we will always have at least 2 candidates on the ballot. So for instance, if you have 3 candidates with 2 votes and 1 candidate with 3 votes, then we would raise all of those. If those are the top tallies, then we would move them up to the next ballot. Obviously, this breaks down if everyone keeps voting the same way. But this is, I think, a cleaner way of doing this. In terms of, what we did last time just didn't work. It wasn't an appropriate method for the number of candidates and the number of electors. So that's it. Please comment if you wish.
I was a little bit confused. Just to clarify, do you mean you get 1 vote?
You will, yes, you get 1 vote on the ballot. You choose your favorite person. And then we tally all the votes. And then if we don't get a majority for a single person, then we go to another round and you vote again. So this is not instant runoff voting because it doesn't work well with a small number of electors and the number of candidates who are close in number to the number of electors. It just turns out garbage results.
So sorry, I'm still confused. What makes it a majority? Is there a certain number of votes that the person has to get?
A majority means that more than half of the votes go to that person.
Oh, okay. So those things weren't clear when I read this. I don't know if other people would be confused, but we might want to have more.
Okay, right. So a definition of majority and plurality. So a plurality means you have the most votes. Majority means you have at least 50% of the vote.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't get that.
Yeah, so my concern was that if you end up with 5 candidates and, 3 people get 2 votes and then the other person gets 3 votes, and you just go with the plurality, then the person with 3 votes is elected, but they've only been selected by 3 members of the board. And it'd be a minority of voters who would select it. And so, go ahead, Sally, please.
Well, so when we did this vote for the interim appointment before, there were 9 electors and there were 3 candidates, and all electors were told to make 3 data points, their first choice, second choice, and third choice, 9 times 3. So there was 27 data points. And that then those 27 data points were counted out among the 3 candidates. And notwithstanding the technical glitch that would have been that whoever got the plurality would have been the one. So when you have a condition that we have now, which is that you have 9 electors and 5 candidates, it might work again to ask all electors to list their perhaps first and second choice, because then there would be 9 times 2 is 18 data points for 5 candidates, and that might allow there to be a greater differentiation in the number of votes between candidates. Or you could even do, please give us your first, second, and third choice. So there would be 9 times 3 is 27 data points for 5 candidates. So that's an option. And then you just simply do it by what you said before, plurality.
The research on what this type of instant runoff voting, there are a number of different methods of arriving if you determining how to weight the votes. When I say a number, I mean a very large number of different ways of doing this.
I wasn't talking about weighting though.
Well, in
it
a
is
sense,
because it's like 3 points for the top one, 2 points for the second place, 1 point for the third place.
so and how you combine those, one of the problems is that when you have a small number of electors and a number of candidates which approaches the number of electors, you can end up with situations where the candidate that's chosen is actually the last candidate, the last preference for everyone.
Oh.
I mean, this is I know this for a fact because I've written software to do this, and the numbers, you need to have a large number of electors for the statistics to work out correctly. And the benefit of this process is that we will hopefully eventually end up with a candidate who gets more than half the votes through, and there will not be a question as to the algorithm we used to weight the votes and how we added them together.
So were you saying that you pick which top ones to move forward? I didn't understand.
I didn't.
Those candidates who have one of the top 2 vote tallies. So for instance, if the top tallies are 3 votes and 2 votes, then everyone who gets 3 votes and everyone gets 2 votes moves on to the next ballot, but those who get 1 vote are left behind. Mm-hmm. And the idea is that you always move at least 2 candidates to the next ballot, so there's always a possibility of getting a majority vote. Eventually, you hope to only have 2 candidates, or you have such a stellar candidate that they come out ahead. But if you... Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I understand now. Thank you.
Okay.
I think if you put this all in writing, that would help us avoid the problem we had last time where people weren't on the same page. So what's here in this email is not enough, I think, for us and the select board to be on the same page about exactly what happens.
Okay, because that's a good point, because in my view, this is exactly what I just said, but obviously not in language which is approachable.
No.
Well,
I didn't understand.
Yeah, I didn't understand that because the differentiating thing that you said this time that was perhaps not evident in your memorandum is that you were saying that we would define a threshold, and the people that would move to the next round of voting would be candidates who received at least 2 votes or more. And any candidate that only received 1 vote would fall off of the round.
No, the top 2 scores.
It's the top 2 scores.
Okay, so whatever the top 2 scores are. So say that, well, I can't even figure it out in my head right now. It's too weird a scenario. It's 9 voters or electors and 5 candidates. But 3 and 2 seem to be the numbers that would be potential. I mean, someone
it could be like 4 and 1 and 1 and 1 and 1 and 1, and you just and 0, right? And you could push them out.
Yeah, if there was a 0, then obviously they go out. If there really comes down to 1 candidate, yeah, in that sort of situation, I think we just go to the next round, and people would vote again, and they say, well, maybe my candidate's not going to get a majority, so they'll move and select.
Oh, I
So here's the thing that's confusing me a little, is that in the second list number down where it says things not yet determined, number 2, the very last sentence describes what I said, and that's obviously not clear. So move on to the next sentence, Brian. One approach is to promote candidates who have the top 2 vote tallies to the next ballot. So that is the sentence I thought was clear, but isn't. So I will, perhaps I'll provide an example so that it's obvious, and I will try to make an example which actually works with the number of electors and candidates. But is there, other than that, well, that is the biggest, that's the most important thing here, is how we do the balloting. And if that's reasonable to the board, then I will let Susan Radicchio know that the board is okay with this, and we can move forward.
Well, so not to be the only one asking questions here, but are we going to use a spreadsheet, or are you writing software for this, or like, how are we entering our votes?
We are all going to, you're going to raise your hand. We can, it's a public vote. So whoever you vote for, so you will simply say who you want to vote for, and Brian or someone will just keep a tally. This is old-fashioned paper balloting, okay? No software.
Yeah, there's definitely not going to be.
Wants to be the one.
Definitely not going to be software. I'm not kidding. My
Oh, you're not going to be there, are you?
Is on May 17th. I'm not just making that up.
No, it's not going to be on May 17th because of town meeting.
Yeah,
right. So yeah. So now I actually will be available.
If you're not there, I will ask. We can ask one of the select board staff to record
that's
the
what I was
votes.
saying. Patty Miley. I mean, they've appointed many people many times. The select board. They appoint a lot more people than we do. A lot more.
Yes.
So Patty, I think we'll just have a tally and just record people's votes.
Yeah.
Just like the way they've done for like 100 years.
Yeah.
I just wanted us to be clear about that.
Yeah,
I think it's very
no
important,
software.
very important to be clear on that.
Shall we also figure out the method by which we shall agree on the 5 or 6 questions?
Well, because this is the idea was that the members of the boards would submit questions to the chairs, and the chairs would put them together, remove the duplicates. So that would be point number 3. We're thinking 5 or 6 questions total. If that's maybe too many, if we want to keep this down to 10 minutes, 2 minutes for an answer is a long answer, and it won't allow any time for follow-up. So I think I guess it depends upon whether the questions can be, what kind of questions come in, and whether you can efficiently combine them. So
super quick. I would imagine 2 to 3 minutes would be one of the questions. If it's not going to be given, I would imagine it still would be, tell us about yourself and why you're running.
Yes,
that's probably the first one. That's a 3-minute response, or it should be.
Yeah, that just to say, Brian, that's number 2. Each applicant is allowed a brief 2-minute statement.
Oh, I see.
So yeah, so that's already, if that's already 2 minutes, and we have 5 or 6 questions, that is not possible. I think it's 3 questions.
Yes, you're right.
I agree with
math works.
I agree with Brian that 3 questions is plenty, and I think that it will be possible to take all the suggested questions from the select board and the planning board and distill them down into 3 pithy questions that get to the heart of the matter.
Okay, so thank you all for reminding me that math works. So 3 questions, and we're going to aim for 2 to 3 minutes in response for each question. Let's say 2 minutes. And that'll get us 6 minutes plus 2. That gets us to 8, and that leaves 2 minutes for follow-ups from the board if we want to keep it to 10 minutes per interview.
And that gets 50 minutes of a 90-minute meeting, and then there's 40 minutes for voting and for deliberation and voting and counting.
Yes.
That's That's reasonable.
I think it's helpful to tell people, I mean, we probably will now that everyone will be in the room, but explain the process to everyone so they know how many questions they have. We just did interviews and people didn't know how many questions we had. So sometimes they'd keep talking, but we were like, well, we have more questions. Right? Like the interviewee needs to have a sense of how much time and how many questions they're getting.
Yeah.
Will all the interviewees be listening to everybody else's answers?
Yes.
Just like, and
Wow.
so they've always been open to the public. When in person, you basically had everyone in the audience.
Yeah.
No one would come up, and obviously that first person is clearly at disadvantage because they don't know any of the questions, and then all the other four after it will have those questions.
That's why I won.
So are they choosing by random? Is the order by random then?
I believe they're going to do it just randomly, yeah.
And how shall it be executed randomly?
I think Patty will probably close her eyes and point on her desk. I don't know.
I mean, even saying to do it alphabetically is still random enough.
No, I think perhaps you could just pull a piece of paper out of a hat real time and say, first candidate to be interviewed is Mr. A and second one is Ms. B. I mean, literally, that's as random as you can get.
That's
it's
could
perfectly, it's perfectly acceptable to do that.
Also transparent.
Yeah,
transparency is key.
So I note that being the first or the last may be a benefit or a debit, depending upon, or a detriment. I certainly, John Stabir of the Housing Partnership Board, when he was back in his day job and had to make presentations to get people to accept projects, would say sometimes being the first was the greatest and sometimes being the last was the greatest. And so it all depended on how boring you were, how boring the people in front of you and behind you were. So anyway, so we are now at 9:20. So I think everyone, I think the big changes are that I have to write things in more in English a little better rather than in DABs. And then we're going to reduce it to 3 questions. And we will have a random selection live on camera. Maybe we can get some of those little lottery balls and have them pop up. That would be cool. And if that's it, then I think that if everyone's happy, then we can move on. Okay, great. Now to the meat of the meeting, and we're only an hour late, is planning board goals, objectives, and scheduling. So Brian, if you could flash over to that other email I sent today. I apologize for sending out all these emails.
He said he'd be back in 2 minutes.
Oh, he did?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, see, I don't have my little chat up there. Okay.
Oh, there he is.
There he is.
I'm back. I needed water desperately.
Yeah. So Brian, if you could pop up that other email that I sent today about organizing our thoughts.
Yep. Hold on just a sec. All right. Okay. Goals, schedules, and actions.
Right. So let's, this is the process. Brian helped me quite a bit with this. We talked about how to move through this efficiently. We have an awful lot of things to pull from the pot. Sally sent out a long list of things. There's also the sort of overview I gave a few weeks back with a bunch of stuff on there. We also have the housing production plan. Has everyone on the board gotten a copy of that? I don't recall, no. So let's make sure everyone gets a copy of the housing production plan. And then there's also, what do we do with that? The Winchester master plan has 2 parts to it. One is the actual action plan, which I'm holding up here, which is a very detailed list of goals and who it is, who's responsible, and things like
that.
that.
The spreadsheet, this thing here?
Yes, that is the spreadsheet. And those from the old planning board should have a nice spiral bound version of it with a pretty color, but we'll make sure that, are the new members, did you get this or no?
I've had this spreadsheet for a long time. It's dated January of 2020. So this is like a year and almost a year and a half old now.
Yeah,
I got this thing, which is basically the zoning bylaws, and then I haven't.
Okay, so we need
About the master plan.
Yeah, so this is
I didn't get the master.
Yeah, so we need to get you copies of the master plan. And Sally, what you really want is the version of that spreadsheet that's been put into the final master plan.
Okay, so the master plan, action plan. And the thing that I have found challenging about this document, which I got from Maureen, because she was cleaning off her desk, this is adopted 3/24/20. It's very difficult to have a hard copy of this if you want to print it yourself, because it's so much ink and graphics, and you can't just cut and paste the text because it's very graphically jumbled.
Right. So
everybody on the planning board should have their own copy of both parts to the master plan.
Right. So I apologize. Yeah, I apologize. I thought that was part of our packet, but that apparently didn't get communicated from me. So why don't we make sure that everyone gets a copy of the master plan, both the executive summary, as it were. And I think there's a way, Brian, we can work to get this onto 8.5 by 11. You and I can talk about this offline. In any case, there is the action plan from the master plan is something that the master plan implementation committee would be part and parcel of making sure gets done. And that's one of our.
Talk about that again.
It got bumped from our schedule. So it was on our schedule a few weeks back, but unfortunately we put it on the schedule when you were away. And so that was our fault. And so we bumped it, and it's coming up soon.
Diab, can I suggest that we start, because this is sort of a brainstorming into consensus process. And perhaps if Brian had a screen up that he was capturing dialogue, and we could in consensus agree about the content and the order and the priority of what comes out of the dialogue visually on the screen while we're talking. Would that work, Diab?
I think it would. I think one of the things that I really want to hear from the members is the first thing on that. I think I don't know what drives you, and I don't know what drives I Ching. I have an idea, I think, of what drives Heather, but I think part of this process is for us to explain to each other where we come from and what we see as important. And so that's why one of the first thing on that list of things I thought we could start with is everyone just spend a couple of minutes and discuss why they're on the planning board, what's important to them, and what is the main focus of where they like to go. Just a couple minutes, and then we could dive into there's so many things. I think that one of the things I had planned on doing was to come up with a spreadsheet and list all the goals. There's just hundreds of them. So
yeah.
So why don't we start? I think if we just start talking.
That list that we were supposed to send to Brian about our priorities, is that part of the discussion? Has that been put together?
Brian sent it around the last time that we were supposed to meet on this, which was what?
Oh, that was the thing?
I don't think I saw the list from the other members of the board.
Well, I never sent anything. I forgot.
Yeah, I received, well, from at that very first meeting, we had all received that document from Sally. I had not received anything subsequent to that, so there was nothing to conglomerate. It was just that document.
So we need to kickstart this. So
Yeah, I mean, I think just go around the horn in terms of 3 minutes or so in terms of what made you kind of want to be on the board, in terms of where you see the direction and growth and development of town over time. Any story, whatever. Just why are you here in a welcoming way.
I'll go first since no one's jumping, but I can do it in less than 3 minutes. I am on the board because I am an urban planner and have spent my whole career thinking about lots of different things for planning: housing, transportation, equity. Now my work focuses on planning for the future. And so I feel like I should offer my skills if I'm able to, in a volunteer capacity. So that's more of a civic duty explanation. But my specific interests for town are about making it more affordable, more diverse housing types, more density in some places, as well as preserving a lot of the historic buildings. I'm specifically interested in adding units to properties and rezoning certain areas to handle more units than single family. I mean, you probably all know that it's a trend to be eliminating single family across the country. And I've always thought that there are spots, especially near, for example, Wedgmere, that should be rezoned to handle several units on a parcel. I think that keeps a lot of people out of town to not have that. That's it.
Wow, that was succinct. Thank you.
That was really well, Heather.
Who would like to go next?
I can go, I guess. That I am on the planning board because I have lived in Winchester for 27 years, and for up until 3 years ago, all I did was work. I was on town meeting for 10 years and then off for 10 years and then back on again or something like that. But I care deeply about the mechanics and the backstory and the outcomes of how Winchester will meet the future gracefully and proactively, not reactively. And I think there's huge development pressure on the town, and there's huge housing equity issues that the town needs to rise to meet, at the same time that we preserve all the things that Heather just talked about. So making sure that we have diverse housing in town, that we have transportation, and transportation, I mean bikes, walking, cars, all of that whole T-tax safety thing. And then also the diversity of housing stock is something that I also agree with Heather very much about. And so all of that is in the context of wanting to preserve the look and feel of what is essentially a really beautiful historic town, very close to downtown Boston. And those can be competing forces, but it's our job as the planning board and to take advantage of the talents of the people on our board and in our town government and in our community to meet those and find the perfect blend of all of those competing forces.
Thank you, Sally. I can go next. I ran for the planning board because maybe just from these past years, I personally just wanting my kids to see somebody who looks like me run for something and be in town government. Architecture background and more recently real estate, and I think that force, the real estate part, has created this intensity that I think I see in a very different way than others on the impact of housing on all sorts of people, from those who have resources to those who don't. And I think that from these past years of racial reckoning and listening and seeing that just how zoning in particular has impacted so much inequity and just wealth accumulation, and how that has become, I think, cruel and something that really needs to be addressed. And I would very much like to see way more diverse housing and people's capabilities to create wealth through property ownership. I like to see us caring for land and acknowledging the trauma that has been on this particular land, right, in Winchester, and how we're not the first here, and we've done a lot of wrong. So in some ways, I can go all the way to reparations and land back kind of things, but also definitely a more myopic way, how to create more opportunities for different people. And I think it's a detriment to the entire town for those even who have a lot to continue to stay the course of just being such a wealthy town. And it's just would be so sad for our children to grow up like that. So it's a lot of it is for long-term equity for me. And I know like these little things are, it's so, they're so little, but I'm a big picture kind of person, and I know how long it's going to take, and I think I'm going to use those motivations to keep going on with the little things.
Thank you.
Just before you go, Diab, I feel like I'm doing like an extremely okay job at gathering what everybody's saying. So the idea of this was really not only for the public to kind of see what is the face of the planning board, because frankly it's quite different now in terms of if we just look at these, just to look on the screen here, this is not talking about housing equity, zoning reform, density. These are not things that typically have been talked about very much on the planning board side. So it's I'm already seeing value here in terms of the board showing its face.
I would be interested to hear what Diab has to say, and then to give each person a chance to go back and fill in anything they feel that they neglected to state. Because, we're sort of doing this, in the moment.
Yeah, no, I think touching base with
up to
people.
Diab as the chair. It's up to Diab as the chair.
Go, Diab.
Yeah, and I wanna first thank everyone for feeling comfortable speaking what they've said. It's not speaking in public about such deeply felt things is not always easy. I will go back to 30 years ago. I was a rabid environmentalist. I still am. And I realized that to save wilderness, you have to save the cities, because people pressure is what's put pressure on the environment. And if we don't make cities a good place to live, then we're going to see a detrimental effect on the environment. And in particular, I grew up in Detroit. There was an awful lot of movement of people out of Detroit for various reasons, long history of racial problems in the area. And what happened was that they flooded out and all of the farmlands and all the forests were gone. So before I moved to Winchester, I thought that the action was in more urban areas, because that's where more people lived. I lived in Somerville for a few years. And I thought that that's where, obviously where most of the people are, that's where you have to do most of the work. We were unable to buy a house where we wanted to. We found a house in Winchester back when it was still possible to buy old house which needed work at a reasonable price. And I first got involved in town politics when then Hamilton Farm was up for sale to Avalon Bay to put in 250 some units. And that was the first time I entered the political fray in Winchester based on the environment and trying to save the farm. And I got to working with the planning board at the time and understood then that there is actually a way of creating a vision and to guide development that I hadn't appreciated. I assumed things just happened, but they didn't. I assumed that Winchester was a static place, and it isn't. So the planning board was incredibly welcoming to me and my partner Sherry when we went in front of them and talked about the farm and a number of things. And then I decided to run for this because to me, housing is one of those things which really creates an environment for success. It creates an environment where people can feel safe. It's one of the fundamental things which anchors a person and allows them not just to succeed, but to feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. And that is, so when I think of housing as a right, and it's a right which should be affordable. And I also look around the Winchester that I moved into in the late 90s, and I see that my neighbors, some of them who've left, could never live here because of how it's changed, and that really saddens me. Mm-hmm. And so I really want us to move back to a town which most people can afford to move into and live, not just a very few people. And then of course there are the repercussions of the housing system which was put in place over the last century, which has kept out people that we have to address. So that's why I'm here.
Great.
Does Brian get a turn, or is that not appropriate?
It depends if Brian feels like it.
Well, I ran for the planning board. No, I'm not. I'll tell you, I'm not running for the planning board in Beverly. I will tell you that much. Yeah, I mean, I'll talk for very briefly, even though I don't believe this is the reason for this agenda item. But I think the easiest thing that I can say is that my background has been very circuitous. My background's actually in wildlife and molecular biology before planning. So I came from the job right before, as I was going through planning school, the job that I came before that was looking for different types of therapies for acute myeloid leukemia. So quite different from here. But in terms of how I got to planning is that I was really, really interested in the interaction between humans, animals, and the environment. Which was really my previous work. And then I really just kind of added the built environment to that, and really realized that the built environment is really that fourth thing, that fourth interaction that's needed. So my background really is, even though it's wildlife and molecular biology, is really kind of based in public health. So I think that's the shortest way is how I got here, was interest in public health and the interactions that we have, like I said, with the environment, animals, and not just the natural environment, but now the built environment, because that was kind of that missing piece that I'd had. I didn't really have that human element dealing with wildlife biology and molecular biology, and I really missed that human element. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you. I noticed you didn't write down anything about why you're here, Brian.
Well, yeah, I have a lot of others. I could certainly, yeah, I don't think I need to do that.
Yeah. Okay, I thank everyone. I think that's really helpful. I think that there's certainly a common thread which runs through all of our stories as to why we're here. I think that each of us probably has a few issues that we are unique in how we look at things in terms of what we would highlight, but there certainly is a common thread about equitable housing and trying to maintain a great place to live that's welcoming to many more people than it is now. So I also note that it is now 9:45, and the question now is, where do we move next? Is this a spot where we should start talking about process? Do we want to say, everyone, please send all of your stuff to Brian and he and I can work on putting it into a digestible form? How do we, I mean, one of the things that Brian came up was the idea of taking our goals and putting them into different categories so that we could then further think about how we would implement things. So we could have a housing category. Everything's kind of interrelated, but certainly, you know, there's affordable housing, there's accessibility in various ways. There's how we ensure that we maintain or improve our environment, certainly. So I think there are a number of categories we can move things into. And then, or if the board doesn't think that's appropriate, then we could move on to something else.
So can I respond to that?
Yeah.
When I was thinking about coming onto this board, and I was thinking about all the incredible amount of work that's in front of this board, I was trying to organize it into categories, as you just said, and the categories that I came up with are the categories that ended up being in that 7-page document, and they were specific things that we had to do that related to sort of the infrastructure and staffing of our work. So outside consultants, filling the planning board seat. And then there's sort of, so that's one whole sort of infrastructure, planning board infrastructure. And you could even put under that, like, how are our policies documented? How are our processes documented? So that's kind of infrastructure stuff. And then there's properties. We get a huge amount of properties coming before us because of requests for advisory positions from the ZBA, or in cases where the SPGA, the Special Permit Granting Authority. So it's projects. And so we have a ton of projects in front of us that are actual property projects, and things that are in appeal, that come off appeal, they come before us, and so on. So that's another category. And then there's also, and this perhaps falls under that infrastructure one, there's documents that definitely need attention. And I mean, I am struck by my continuing difficulty with trying to compile all the planning board minutes from X date to the present. It's not easy for me as a planning board member. It's probably not easy for anybody. So that's probably definitely part of infrastructure. And then there's strategies, things that we want to do that will make the town a better place and a more accessible place to live in. When I say accessible, I mean not just about physical handicaps or whatever, but also socioeconomically accessible, affordable town. So there's strategies for aging in place, strategies for permitting new kinds of diverse housing in town. I had actually a whole list of things that when I go through the zoning bylaw and when I go through the regulations governing section 7.3, I see things that I just don't agree with, and I would like to put them back on the table for discussion. So that's another category, like making changes to the rules that we work with now. So that's another whole category. And then another whole category, and perhaps this is under infrastructure, is the appointments that we have to other boards or that we make to other boards. and our relationship to the other boards, commissions, councils, and boards, committees, commissions, and councils in the town. So that's more part of that infrastructure thing. So the big thing is really properties, strategies, and this giant bucket that I called infrastructure, but maybe that doesn't make sense to other people.
I think it's another way of looking at it. Yeah. Brian, you were going to chime in, I think. No?
Well, so I'm trying to figure out, this kind of goes back to our master plan implementation committee or discussion. But one thing, let me bring this up. So the categories, and this is different, obviously. This is not, the master plan should not be synonymous with the planning board's work, right? The idea is that the master plan puts together many different departments, many boards and committees, and it's not, I just happen to like how it's organized. So in terms of the framework, so where you see here this balancing development, so that's
we're still seeing your email.
Oh, great. So
there we go.
That's boring.
Is this the implementation plan, the action plan?
This is, yes, this is, so this is the master plan, known as this one's called the pages. There's a pages version and then there's a spreads version. So this is the pages version. And you can see here, so a lot of the goals that people have been talking about really is this balancing the development / building community. Anytime where we can potentially go back to these type, so these all have obviously plenty of goals in them that have been vetted through the planning board, the town, many people. So it's obviously on my list here to get this, whoever wants a paper copy of this, but obviously making sure that everyone has the housing production plan and the master plan. But the idea of balancing development, so that has to do specifically with increased housing production, as well as balancing that with historic preservation. Connecting people to places kind of really talks about that transportation element, traffic and transportation safety, sustainability, and building community is really more on that diversity, equity, inclusion conversation. So as we go forward, you're going to be seeing these four kind of as in my mind, just because I happen to like how it's organized, and it makes sense to refer back to these types of so I think it's my job to kind of drill down on to determine everyone's goals, objectives, that type of thing, and see where it's like, oh, well, that actually is in goal 6.3 of balancing I want to, and that kind of gives us this idea of kind of this borderline what's happening with master plan and implementation committee. However, there are many parts of this plan that is the planning board's responsibility.
Right.
So through this conversation and whatever specific goals, I think the easiest thing would be, once this master plan is sent to, or once these are read, I think I guarantee you that everything that has been said tonight is somewhere in here. I guarantee it. So I think it might just be the idea of planning board members looking at the plan and seeing what goals and objectives in here kind of really correspond with your specific desires.
I'm interested to hear what Heather says.
I think Heather is being quiet.
Oh, I was just noticing the time and wondering what our goal is for tonight, because I'm a little burnt out on town meeting.
I think our goal tonight is we have 5 minutes left. I don't think that we need to push it further than that. I don't know that we have minutes to approve. I'm pretty sure I didn't see any.
And are we putting the steering committee on a subsequent agenda?
Yes, we are. I don't know when it will come up very soon. I think that it's already become apparent in just talking about categories that at least 3 people have different ideas of what categories there are. So I think that I like Brian's steering us back to the master plan. I think one of the key things about the master plan is it is actually a product of a lot of discussions with the community. And one of the things that, you know, as board members, we certainly have our own agendas, and I don't mean that in a negative sense, but we came here for particular reasons, but we also came here to represent what the community wants. So ensuring that the intersection works well, I think is important. So I thank you, Brian, for bringing that back. So I just want to hear if anyone wants to talk some more about you know, categories or things like that. I think that's probably the last thing we're going to have time to for this evening. So Yiching, if you wanted to say something.
I'm curious about just, I know that Heather brought up ADUs maybe a couple of years ago, and I keep hearing you guys talk about how she like put together something to present. And in that kind of a process, if we have like a kind of initiative or something, like what is the process of bringing it to this board, and how do we get it on the agenda? And, you know, I know Sally wanted to talk about a specific property in the sale of it. And so like how do we go about that?
Well, I think to kind of introduce, well, I don't want to say negative thoughts, but so we have to decide how much, you know, everything takes effort, and there is definitely a limited amount of effort that's available from this board. So I don't want to dissuade anyone from thinking about a project, but if this board wants to pursue it, then we need to have buy-in from the board so that we say, this is important, we're going to move it. So if I think that prioritizing goals and then saying, let's say we want to do ADUs, and the board says ADUs is an important thing. So then we need to set up a plan. Do we have a subcommittee? Again, we have open meeting law things to worry about. So we could only have a maximum of 2 people from this board working on that subcommittee to identify different types of ADUs, reach out to communities. We could set up hearings to talk to people in the community and find out what it is they hope to get out of ADUs. What is the problems that it would solve for them? Then we could reach out, we could look at how other towns have done with ADUs. We could bring in people who have, I always think there's an awful lot of talent in the academic institutions around here where people may have thought about this, or at least have more of a background. Not having been to planning school, maybe I'm wrong about that, but the idea would be then to come up with a framework for how we would want to implement ADUs. We would have, we would know what type of ADUs, whether we would phase them in gradually to open it up to more things, and then we would write actual zoning. And then we would express our desires, and then we would take that and hand it over to the legal team, the town council, who would write hopefully zoning, which is what, you know, to do that end of it, because they have to be careful. And then we would bring it to town meeting. And we would say, and then by then we would have created enough history and support that if it goes through town meeting, we would have a reasonable chance of getting it through. So that's kind of a long-winded way of saying that something like this will take time, but that's the vision I see of how we move things through.
Another part of Yiching's question, I think, might have been, Yiching, correct me if I'm wrong, if you have something you want to talk about, you would tell Diab and Brian and ask about getting it on the agenda.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, but both are true. Like,
yeah.
As casual as like, wait a second, you know, how can we talk about all the land that's going to developers and turning into McMansions? Like, how do we, you know, talk about that issue without violating open meeting law?
Well, we could certainly, all you have to do is, if you have an agenda item, you can certainly send it to us. I think the key thing that we have to look at it is is through the lens of what the planning board can do and what the tools we have are available. So I think that's one of my concerns is that in the past we've had agenda items where people have sat there and they've talked about them, and we really haven't come up with anything to move forward on it, because in part I think there's we all sit around, or we sat around the table and said, this is a horrible thing, but what can we do? And so I would love to have people bring forward ideas on how we can not just talk about it, but how we could actually progress and get things done. And so
Well, I liked Brian's idea of connecting the things we're interested in with what's listed in the master plan. That might be a good first step, because if a bunch of the things we're thinking of are captured as strategies, then we can just circle them and then prioritize them as a group if they're already,
I agree. I think Heather's.
I'm happy to do that for my, I'm happy to take a look through there and see which ones are kind of the same as things I care about.
I strongly believe everybody's reason for being here, or goals and objectives, that I mean nearly all of them in some way, maybe in a more general term, they are in there.
Yeah.
And it's good that there seems to be consensus, maybe not on how to do it, but there seems to be consensus on several important changes potentially. So to the zoning. Very quick technical or administrative thing. There will be a lot of meeting minutes coming in. I've been chatting here with Nancy. There was it was the April 6th meeting minutes that Sally had, and there was just a quick, it was an error in terms of there was an appeal from the bylaw, but it was actually an appeal of a building permit. She had made that quick note. And I think that was
There was a change in the spelling of the word tracks.
There you go. And I'm not seeing anything else. So it's possible. I think that this is ready to be voted in for April 6th. And it was the 4 members that are here currently. So everyone was there according to this. I'm going to get it. I actually have it up. But in terms of admin, I see it's 10:03. But I think this is ready to be voted on as amended.
Yeah, because it's actually been before this board already, and
correct.
So I'm happy if someone wants to move to accept the meeting minutes for what
April
is it?
6th. April 6th as amended.
2021.
So
that was that motion is by who? Not by
Heather.
But I did it. I
Ching.
I couldn't tell who did either.
So
April
okay,
6th
so
minutes.
Ching firsted, and who seconded?
I can second.
Okay, Sally seconded. And so let's do a roll call vote, please. Sally?
Dale, I approve of April 6th planning board meeting minutes.
I Ching?
Scott, I.
Heather?
Shannon, I.
Jarius, I. That is 4-0. Okay. Thanks for bringing that up. I think what we're going to try to do is triple in these meeting minutes and hopefully do them at the beginning of the meeting so that we don't, they're really quick, and so we can get them out of the way and not have them pushed to the end and left off. So,
can I just make one point about the mechanics and the process? We have town meeting twice a year, and town meeting is where, if we want to make changes to zoning bylaws, that's the vehicle for doing it. If we want to make changes to our regulations governing a section of the zoning bylaw, I don't believe that we have to take that to town meeting. So that's another tool in our toolkit, so that we have those 2 tools. And by the last time that I counted, we had 13 meetings between when I counted and the fall town meeting. And one of the things that would be helpful coming out of this priorities exercise is to understand in those 13 meetings, given everything else that comes across us, like ZBA petitions and stuff, what can we realistically bring to fall town meeting of 2021? And what could we imagine realistically bringing as zoning bylaw revisions for spring town meeting 2022? and further out, but who knows if we can even think that far. But those were those were techniques and tools that I wanted to put on the table.
That's a great idea. And to go a little tangential, if someone can come up with a way of reducing the amount of time we spend on ZBA petitions and special permits, I would love to hear it. It's really, that is, I think, the biggest non-deterministic chunk of time that we have. And I apologize for not running a tighter meeting this evening, but if there are ways that we can streamline that process so that we actually only take a half an hour to do that, so we have more time, I think that would be really good.
So
I like the new way that you've been doing, or maybe Heather started this, where where you gauge if we want to approve something, and we can speed up that part, and then we don't have to deliberate at all.
Yeah, that was Heather's innovation. Give her credit for that. Yeah.
So what I did for one of the two properties tonight is I did a really deep dive, and I came up with 5 points that I wanted to make. And one way to have gotten some of those off my list would have been for me just to make a phone call. And it's like one of them was, well, did the DPW or the building department know about the curb cut, or did they approve the driveway, or did they know about the tree, the historic tree being torn down? And then I could say, oh, I would very quickly, it would take me less than 20 seconds to say, I was concerned about this. I talked to this person. My concern has been allayed. So now I only have 2 concerns, and they are this and this. And now I've done the whole thing in 60 seconds.
That is true, but it does put a lot of burden on you to do that part. And so,
well, it puts a burden on every single member of the planning board to get their questions, chase down answers before the meeting, and bring those answers to the meeting. And that's not necessarily realistic for people. So I mean, just maybe it's what you did tonight, where you just grab time.
But I do chase. That's why you pay me. So so you know, if you do have questions, anyone on the board, about any of this stuff, chances are I have them, or I guarantee you I know where to get them. So that's one thing. I mean, yeah, there is one. I mean, the idea of obviously neighborhood sentiment is important, but I think we can, you know, we don't necessarily, I mean, if all the neighbors are generally saying the same thing, we can be more forceful in saying, we understand. Like, we don't need 9 people saying the same thing. And it's hard because you want to let people speak their opinion. However, it's more for the ZBA to hear the neighborhoods. The planning board is here to, in this case, give an advisory role based upon their analysis.
And that's the difference between a hearing and a meeting. Is that right, Brian?
I mean, I would not say it's that official that with a hearing you have to have public comment, and for a meeting you don't. But it's more of meaning you can have a public hearing, but it doesn't. It's not cut and dry like that, I guess, is the easiest way to say it. I would say it's. Go for it, Heather.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I didn't. I think it's more important for the board to ask questions, meaning if they have concerns about what the neighbors would feel, then they should clearly ask the neighbors how they feel about a certain, you know, how they feel about something. I just have found that there generally is a neighborhood feeling. It's not usually mixed. It's usually, so it's like, okay, so on this specific project, we know that the neighbors are not in favor of it. Like that can take out 12 minutes.
Well, especially if you can just
what they are in terms of terms of what those things are. Yeah, you can't just say, but I mean, that can take out 12 minutes of feedback that can be summed up in a minute.
I was just gonna say, I don't think that's usually what keeps us going over. And I think what would help us talk amongst ourselves more quickly is like the times when you've been typing our comments on the screen as bullet points, right? So like, if you're typing what each of us is saying, maybe we would get through it a little quicker because we would see, okay, we've got these concerns, they're kind of generally in these 3 buckets, and maybe we could move on faster that way. Or like,
No,
yes, I agree with 1, 3, and 5. Let's include that in our thing.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do that. We typically do that when we are the special permit granting authority, because we're putting conditions together that need to get put into a decision. But yeah, let's just do that for these. If you know, it does help when everyone's looking at the same thing. So.
Well, and I would support that, and I would ask the question: in what way can I, as the clerk, partner with Brian and with Nancy so that it can go more quickly? So that's a separate discussion, but I put that out there because I do believe I don't have young children at home, and I'm not working a full-time job. So I have more time to give to this board than possibly other members.
I appreciate that offer. But I think that it's important that we don't put so much work on the clerk that only a person in your position can do that work.
Well, that would be true.
And so my concern has been the sustainability of the positions of the board to make sure that that the clerk, it's just so that ordinary people can actually do this. Not that you're not ordinary or
I know I'm extraordinary. No.
Yes. So right. So I think one of the other tools that is in my box is that I could actually be really restrictive on how much time I say. You get 2 minutes and that's it.
Yeah, I like that. Remember we had a timer?
We did have a big red timer when we were in physical space that we would wind up, and it would have this little red thing which would go away as your time went away. So I could be extremely assertive about that. And if the board is okay with that, then I'm more than happy to say, you know, on this one, you get 2 minutes apiece. On this one, it's more complicated, you get 3 minutes. And then just try to remind you, I mean, I do actually have a little clock here. I've been watching all night, watching as time slipped away. So if that's helpful, I can certainly do that.
Well, the League of Women Voters goes, and it says 1 minute.
I can do that. Okay. I can make a nice card.
Are you saying, Dia, that you're going to give us those 2 minutes?
Yes.
You're gonna, okay, and then we can also. Are you okay with me saying things like, you know, it's 8:15?
I am more than okay, because I can't even keep attention to the chats Brian's been sending me all this meeting saying, hey, this person wants to speak, and I'm like, oh, you sent me a chat? Yes, well, please do so.
And I like the fact that much as there were people, including the owners of 19 Wedgemere, who wanted to speak, they were given a chance to speak, and then that chance was over because you, as the chair, were managing the time and saying you had your piece, take the rest to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that we have the luxury of doing, is we can say we are an advisory board. Your real beef is with the ZBA. So if you need to convince anyone, it's them.
And so they will take our advice into consideration, but they're the deciders.
They are the deciders.
So if we, as a board, can put these proposals as a second priority, and know that we are trying to speed through them, and we can come to a consensus, get the tone of the board earlier on, and just to keep moving without getting to the finer points. Maybe
yeah, that would be. Okay. If you are. You know, I think part of the role of the chair is to perhaps, you know, get the sense of where people are going. So if you don't mind me interrupting you saying, I think we're ready to move on, you know, of course, I will try to be polite.
Or Dia, what if you went around and just said, like, are you leaning favorable or unfavorable?
Yeah, like a jury, right?
Yeah.
Good idea.
Okay. Like, okay, most of you are favorable. What's the issue for the other person?
Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to send you all 2 cards. One says yes and one says no. And then you just hold it up to the camera and I'll know exactly which way. And I don't even have to ask you.
Or maybe we just have a secret code. Like if you're going to wear a red ribbon, it's because you don't like the project. And if you have a green ribbon, you can say, oh, they like the project. We're going to, whatever. I just made that up.
We could do that. It would be odd watching people change ribbons throughout the meeting. But we could certainly do that. Okay, well, I sense from my point of view, at least, that it's time to end the meeting.
Yeah.
It is 10:15. I appreciate you hanging out, and I really appreciate your bringing your points of view to us all. And so again, if you have something you'd like to see on the agenda, send it to Brian or I. It's always open. If it doesn't get there the very next meeting, but we'll try to make sure it gets there as soon as possible after that, just depending on all the other stuff. And anyway, is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
I missed. So moved.
Second.
Second. And I'm just, okay, I guess we have to do a roll call vote. I Ching?
Scott, aye.
Heather Hannon.
Aye.
Sally Dale.
Aye.
Jerry is aye, 4-0. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Brian Brian with the Y for sticking it out for this long. Thank you, WinCam. Thank you, Winchester residents who are seeing us either live or on tape, as we used to say in the past. And we'll see you all again in a couple weeks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Oh, wait.
Bye, everyone. This is just for scheduling. So town meeting is the 17th.